biggest challenge of running an NGO in India is the perception of an NGO itself. Like half the people don't consider NGO as a profession. The idea of an NGO is not something that people in India do consider as a profession. And the second is that those who consider it as a profession have a very negative association. They think all NGOs are corrupt.
So in the age when we are all busy partying and making friends and stuff, so we have someone who was doing something very different from what we usually do. So welcome to the podcast, Chandni, and hope we have a nice uh, interview right now. So would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. So I'm Chandni and I'm currently 24. I founded my NGO Raindrops Foundation when I was 19, and since then I went on to complete my masters from UK, and it's been 4 years that I've been running this NGO with my wonderful team, and we work in four sectors mainly. One is gender, the other one's rural development, the third is disability rights, and the fourth one's environment. So mostly we try and work where all these four sort of intersect together, and we also continuously provide relief work, whether it's it's when floods come in Bihar, on other areas. So we try to basically intervene wherever we feel that there's a need to provide some sort of relief. Like in COVID, currently we've been working, so we've provided help to more than 4,000 people during the lockdown in different parts of the country.
So just whatever you told me. So we all see these things around us, right? But what always we do is none of our business. We move on. So at this age, when most of the people are not thinking of it, what made you start this NGO? Basically, there was some stories you saw something or something cracked up, or it was a gradual process.
Yeah, so there was no eureka moment like one life-changing or life-altering situation that just happened and made me do it. But this was something that I've always wanted to do as a child. Like ever since I understood there's something called an NGO, I just knew that this is something that I had to do, no matter what I do as a profession, no matter where I am in the world. This is something that I still wanted to do despite anything else, but I wasn't sure when this would happen, how this would happen, and I think I was just waiting for a little push to just do it. And I think this came when I did journalism as my undergrad. So there were two, three incidents that happened. The first one, we were reading about this Pulitzer-winning journalist called Kevin Carter. I'm sure you must have seen his picture. There was this picture of a starving African little girl, and there was a vulture waiting to just like eat her because she looked, like that close to a corpse. That's how starving she was. And Kevin Carter took that picture and he won a Pulitzer for it. But he couldn't really do anything for the girl, and that's why he took his own life after 4 months of that picture. So that was one incident that made me realize that this is not what I want to do. Like, I can't just look at someone's suffering and not do anything about it. And I realized that I did have certain privileges. Like I could I had the means to go to that person. I had my own vehicle. I had a camera. I had the storytelling ability. So why not use that for something which could help other people? And that's when I started going, and I started meeting people who I thought could benefit from a little exposure that I could give them from my stories online. And these were the people who didn't really want like sympathy, or they didn't want to live on begging, even though they could have easily done that. And they had really sad stories to tell people. They could have easily just gone on by living off that, but they wanted to do something else, and they wanted to earn an honest living. And I decided to help people like that initially. So we started, like me and a group of friends, we started pulling in money, and we started buying their items in bulk because they wouldn't accept donations. They just wanted to have like some to earn honestly and with their hard work. So we would cover the stories, we would put it online, and because we didn't know what to do with that excess, that's when I decided that we should start further donating these, so it would help two people, the one who's selling it and then a lot of other people who would receive this donation. So to institutionalize that, we decided to make an NGO, and that's how Raindrops was started.
So just like you said that there were many people who didn't want the cash, they wanted, so you bought items. So you would have faced so many challenges just when you started out till date, I guess. New challenges keep on coming up. So what do you think were the biggest challenges you faced so far?
Biggest challenge of running an NGO in India is the perception of an NGO itself. Like half the people don't consider NGO as a profession. They think that anyone who goes and donates groceries or anything on a Tuesday outside a mandir, that's equivalent to running a full-time NGO. So for them to actually understand and have that kind of support to this initiative is still very difficult. I don't think we still receive like people who take us seriously, first of all, because of our age and because of the idea of an NGO is not something that people in India do consider as a profession. And the second is that those who consider it as a profession have a very negative association. They think all NGOs are corrupt, or with some incidences, like if you would have seen recently, like there are in some states there were these homes where girls live, so there were some
Yeah.
controversies there. So just because of one or two odd cases, all NGOs in India have acquired this negative perception that is so hard for us to kind of shed. So for every week when we tell people that we're running an NGO, I don't like really see that kind of perception that I saw in UK when I used to tell people that I have an NGO. So people are a lot more open and they're a lot more appreciative as compared to in India, where people are still not accepting NGOs as either something that's positive or that could actually work as a profession. Despite like the government trying to promote NGOs, the Prime Minister himself appreciated the work being done by NGOs recently, but it's still hard, I think, for us to kind of shed that negative image.
Like you mentioned, when you were in UK and you told people you run an NGO, the reaction was different from as in India. So was living and working from UK and studying as well different from India there? Like, would you like to compare, like give a comparison, studying and working here and studying and working there?
So I think in terms of just pure academics, I personally didn't see a lot of difference because I was studying in LSR, which is one of India's best colleges. So in terms of academics, it wasn't, to be honest, wasn't much different. And I'm sure, but people who study, because I studied a theoretical course, so I might have a different experience for someone who studies science or engineering or architecture, who have these state-of-the-art labs. But even despite that, the infrastructure provided and the experience was overall very different. And I think maybe we could learn something from that, just in the terms of infrastructure. But I still feel that our public education is a lot better than abroad, because if you compare the prices, what you pay there, what you pay here, then it's a massive difference. And I think just because of that factor, we are very lucky to be studying how we do. But if I had to compare the overall things, like I said, that opening an NGO there as a student is much easier compared to India. The laws are very strict, the tax laws are very strict, and there everyone's more open to situations and just the openness that you receive there. So, for example, the idea of a charity shop is very popular in the UK, and a charity shop is where people donate their old clothes and then people can go and buy. In India, when we try to do something like that, there will be a lot of negative response, because they say, how can you charge a poor person for something like, how can you charge? You should give them for free. We already do that, but this was just something we were trying to adopt, and I still feel that there are a lot of things like people don't accept the idea of an NGO staff being paid. So we still don't pay anyone because we don't even have the capacity right now. Like we're still a youth-run NGO, and just because of that whole idea that you cannot, this is something that you do as a voluntary work. I think a lot of these different perceptions act as huge challenges that we need to overcome.
Then how about the funding and stuff? How do you connect to people in India?
So most of the success that we found is in microfunding, where we launched different campaigns, and it's nice to know that majority of our funding comes from the youth. So this is a positive sign that at least people of our age are understanding and appreciating the work that we do, because I would say about 80% of our microfunding comes from people of our age, from 18 to 25, 27. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but
Coming
we
to you.
like more.
Yeah, I said coming to you, like, let's talk about you. We'll talk about the NGO later. How do you manage all the study, the work, and the NGO and everything at the same time? Like, how do you do that? Because I remember being in college, I had time for nothing.
So I think to begin with, most of my free time I would do these things because I don't really have a lot of other leisure. Like I don't keep a separate time for leisure, or I don't have any other hobbies that would require that much of time. This was something that I fully dedicated all my extra time to, apart from studying and doing extracurriculars like public speaking or MUNs, youth parliament. So I always had time for NGO, my own NGO, and the good thing was that most of my friends, most of my family, I asked them to help me out in this. So whenever I would meet them, I, it sounds very boring for the other person, but this was all I did in parties and family get-togethers. Anytime we met, this was all I had. I was okay. Let's do this. What are we going to do for the next donation drive? What are we doing for the next event? So I'm that kind of a person, and thankfully it worked out pretty well for me because of my team, because of everyone who's been helping me.
Take you to a little controversy. Like you said, you work in the area of gender inequality in India, right? So there was this thing trending a lot recently on YouTube, Twitter, everyone talking about it. And people are talking about how feminism is becoming pseudo feminism. We already have equality in our society now. We don't need these fake feminists around us. We don't need them. All they do is not worth the hype. Okay. So do you think misogyny still exists in our society? Like, how do you see it at different levels in our society?
I think it's definitely, and it's so deep seated in our society that sometimes you don't even realize it because it's been so normalized that it becomes difficult for people to identify how misogyny works in subtle and everyday ways. So if you compare the situation of our metropolitan cities with rural India, then obviously the people would not feel that when you compare a situation of girls from these urban cities to women in rural India, it does feel like we've achieved some sort of uh, gender parity. But that does not mean that there's no need of feminism in our sectors, because the problems and the situations are very different. Just because we've achieved the right to go and study in co-ed schools or get jobs and just the things that others are fighting for, because we've achieved that, it does not mean that our struggles are over. So I think the problem with a lot of the women rights movement in India is that we fail to understand these extreme differences. That when we talk about our issues, the issues that are highlighted in the media are usually of that of the urban, educated, middle class Indian woman. And because of that, people don't really take us seriously because they feel, but you're studying, look at that woman in the village, she's not even allowed to go out after 5. You are going out, you're studying, you're doing a job. What do you need feminism for? So I think gender studies is such an important thing that we need to teach in our schools, and everyone needs to be aware of this, that how these subtle inequalities are being promoted in a society.
Okay. So let's move towards what we all are facing right now, the pandemic, the COVID-19 thing. So, how was serving during this duration different from how you did like last 3 4 years? Like, how was that experience different for you personally?
So when the pandemic started and we decided to raise funds for it, we were sort of expecting a very lackluster response because we were assuming that since there have been like mass layoffs and people are losing their jobs, the economy is down, people will not be very forthcoming in giving donations at this situation. But it was such a humbling experience to receive so many donations at this time that we don't even like usually do in other times when we raise funds. This one was, I would say, the most successful fundraising campaign that we did in the last 4.5 years. So that was such a positive and humbling experience for us to see that even during this time when people are struggling themselves, everyone's struggling, everyone's facing some sort of losses. But even then, they are coming out and they are willing to donate for people who they feel are less fortunate in these times. So we were really taken by surprise, and we are so thankful for everyone who's made this possible. And we are still like, even though the lockdown is over, we are still every day we receive requests for ration donations or food donations, medicines. So we're still providing that, and it's only because of these donations that we are able to help so many people.
That I was so delightful to hear this from you. Like the last you said, how people are donating in this times. So, do you have like a message for people? You want to convey something relating to your NGO, or maybe not relating in general?
In general, I would just like to request people to inculcate more empathy in these times. I already feel that we're moving in the right direction. Like I've been noticing this, that people are now empathizing more with people from like lesser uh, people who are less privileged, less fortunate. But there are still other categories that we need to empathize more. So persons with disabilities in India, I still feel are some categories, or people from other sexual orientations, or even women. I think these are the categories that people really need to empathize with more because
Exactly. This is
I
something
still feel that
else
these are the
I
categories we
noticed
need
this.
to, yes.
Yeah. So this month was Pride Month, the previous one, June, right? But amidst all this chaos going on around us, we almost missed it, right? So I just wanted to know your views on homophobia in India.
This again is something that we really, really need to work together. And I think empathy is the key. Like people really need to put themselves in the shoes of other people to understand that how
A
your
basic level, what happens is the very first thing I have heard from people around me is it's unnatural. People don't accept it as natural.
so this is something that like years of advocacy efforts would take to undo, and people who say this really need to go and go back and read their own scriptures. If we go and read ancient Indian texts, then we would get to know that this is something that has been there since the Vedic ages, and it was so openly, it was out there. It was not something that was taboo. It was out there, and it was only after like the British rule that Article 377 was introduced, and this was called unnatural. The law itself called it unnatural, and now that that law has been repealed, it's time that we try and doing these like little advocacy efforts, little changes in the society attitude of people.
Thank you so much for connecting, Chandni. It was so wonderful talking to you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And just